In this video, I will show you some very aggressive attacking options if you want to play the Queen's Gambit. And we are going to take a look at the Queen's Gambit accepted. So basically when black captures our pawn here on c4, and we are always going to play pawn to e4. In this video, we will focus especially on the variations where black plays the early e5 or c5. And these early e5 and c5 moves are not something you will see quite a lot at the lower level online, but as you are rising up the rating ladder, you will see these variations more and more often, because those are the top grandmaster responses to the Queen's Gambit. So we are first going to take a look at e5, which is probably the most popular of the two, and also one of the most difficult to deal with white if you don't know what you are doing. So black basically gambits a pawn here, but taking this is not really a good idea as white, because first of all, we are just creating doubled pawns. Black's gonna capture here, we are not gonna be able to castle, and black's just gonna win back this pawn anyways, so we don't wanna go for this as white. I see many players also go wrong here and push to d5, but this is structurally not so good actually, because black is just still up a pawn, might just defend this in the future, and also this centrum can be attacked by black. And I found a really interesting variation you can try to beat players when they go for e5. And that is to go for knight f3 first, which is one of the main lines here. Basically, instead of capturing, we are going to allow black to capture us. So we're going to play out the knight, and now we are attacking this pawn 2 times. So really easy to remember, we just want to attack this pawn twice. And most likely black is going to capture you, which is going to lead to our variation. Of course, black doesn't have to capture you, but if they don't, we already have 2 pieces lined up here. Sometimes they try to play something like bishop g4 instead, thinking, well, we are going to pin this knight, but that's actually not so good, because we can just capture here, and let's say we go for this trade. Now all of a sudden we have a checkmate threat here, and we still are threatening to win this pawn. And if black tries anything else, for example moving out the knight, black is actually also losing, because we have sacrificing the bishop, and then we can take here with check, and then we will also be able to win a piece here after the king move. So for example in this variation. So those are some interesting tricks to know, because actually bishop g4 is also very common in these lines, and often you have this trick where you can sacrifice or give a check with the queen and also come in here on this side of the board. And I think the only other thing you will sometimes see is they will check here, but that's never really a problem, because you can basically just block with the knight. But most of the time black is going to capture here. And if they do, you will see we basically have the opportunity right now to recapture here with either the knight or the queen, but we are not going to do that. We are going to capture here on c4. And the plan is just we are developing the bishop. We are attacking this weak f7 pawn, which is going to be a target of attack in many of these lines. And we are going to try and win this pawn back in the future. We still have some time to do that. And here black will almost always go for knight c6, because of course they want to defend this pawn, which has been attacked twice. Other moves by black, I think sometimes you might also get them to give you this check, but that's not really a problem. You can play knight to d2, and we are going to transpose to our main line. So knight to c6, and black is basically defending this so we can no longer capture. And here there are many different variations, but most of them are pretty boring and also just not that good for white. So I tried coming up with the most aggressive line, and I found a really interesting way to play here as white. And that is to remember this idea to play knight to d2. And knight to d2 might seem a little bit passive at first, but we're going to get some crazy attacking chances. The main goal here is we are just going to develop the knight and protect this pawn, because black will almost always at some point play knight to f6 and then also attack here. And we are going to try in many lines to put the queen here and put double pressure here. Sometimes the knight might actually also join in some variations. Sometimes we will also just be able to start pushing here with this pawn, and we are going to create a lot of problems for black. So this is more of a preparation move. Here again there are multiple options for black. The main option I'm going to continue with for this variation is if black plays bishop b6, because as I said, we could also have gotten to this point in a different move order with bishop to b4 first. Something else you will probably see a lot is moves like bishop g4, but I just told you that you always have tricks here, and the good thing with this is that your queen is actually doing a double attack. So black has to defend both of these at the same time, and that's not really possible. Let's say they play queen d7, trying to defend this. Well, actually now you can capture, and after they take, you can just capture here. And that might seem a little bit crazy, but the goal was we were going to distract the queen with the bishop sacrifice, and now we are attacking this rook, we are attacking this knight. Let's say they save the rook, we can take here with check, so black is in a lot of trouble. So you always have very interesting lines here if they go for something like bishop g4, very aggressive options. The same goes for knight f6. If they play knight f6, we are just going to go for the attack here. And then black's going to have to defend, we can castle, and you will also get similar lines as we will see in this video. The thing with bishop b4 is that queen b3 is still possible, but queen b3 was especially strong because we had a double attack, right? We had this attack on f7 and also this attack on this b7 pawn. And if the bishop is here, that's actually blocking us from attacking this b7 pawn. So that is how you can try and remember this. If the bishop is here, there's no point in going up with the queen because you won't have a double attack. You will only have a single attack here, and black can defend that if he wants to. So that's really the interesting thing to remember here. There are a couple of moves you can play here. You can always castle, or you can play queen to b3. And I think both of those are possible and they lead to the same variation. Maybe queen b3 first is the most interesting option because you are in a way still forcing white to defend. But as I said, this is not the most crucial move here. You can always castle, you could play a3, you can do a lot of things. But I have a really interesting line with queen b3. Because we are attacking, so black has to defend. Probably something like queen e7, right? Trying to defend this. And then we are going to castle. So as I said, you can also play it the other way around. Doesn't matter too much. And then, let's say black plays knight f6. Of course, they want to try and castle. We are going to go for this move a3. So again, as I said, many of these ideas, you can just combine them. It's more the general plan that counts. So we are going to challenge this bishop. Most likely get a trade. And then we are going to take back here with the bishop. And this is just the main idea you have to remember. You can go for this a3 move, you can go for this queen b3 move, you can castle. And then we are always going to give away this pawn for free here in the center. And this is actually a poison pawn. If black takes this, he is immediately losing. So let's say black takes this with the knight, while we actually have rook e1 attacking the knight. And the knight is kind of stuck, because if the knight moves, well, we would be able to capture the queen. So let's say they castle. And then we have a crazy move like bishop g5. We are attacking the queen, and the queen can actually not go anywhere here. So yeah, let's say they go back here to e8 because they have to move. You can always play bishop here, and bishop here is a double attack, and we are going to be able to win this knight. And you can think, well, why can't black play f6 or f5? Well, this pawn is pinned to the king, so that's not possible. So if they capture here with the knight, you can always pin with the rook, play bishop g5, and you are going to win material. If they capture here with the queen, well, you basically just have rook here and the queen is pinned to the king. So you immediately win material. So black should not capture this, but I think some players will probably try and capture this with the knight because it's easy to miss this idea with bishop g5. If they don't capture us, we are going to defend it because now that the king is castled, we don't want them to capture this pawn for free. And let's say black plays bishop to g4. The main idea, as I said, if you have exhausted all of your ideas with pawn a3, capturing with the bishop, castling, putting the rook here, if you are just running out of ideas, the goal is just to start pushing this e pawn down the board. Because you have to remember, we are in this position still down a full pawn. We should still at some point try to win this back or try to win something back because we might be in trouble. Again, you might think, well, why would white play this? They are giving away this pawn. Of course, they can also play a pawn to b6. But basically, every line here is losing for black. So even if they play something like pawn to b6, they are going to lose. Because we always have this idea with pawn to e5. And after pawn to e5, well, this knight has to move. It doesn't really have a lot of good squares. So let's say we go back, right? Doesn't really matter. And every variation, we're always going to keep pushing. So we're going to push e5, e6. And you will see that all of this is beautifully lined up against the enemy king. And of course, if white takes this, he's in a lot of trouble because actually we can take with the rook, attack the queen, and also attack this knight. And we have some discovered checks as well. So black is just dead lost in all variations here. So black cannot capture this. But even if black doesn't capture this, they have to move the queen. Let's say, for example, let's say queen f6, for example. Well, here we can just take this knight for free. And if black tries to move the knight, which is also possible, of course, we can take here. And this is protected twice. If the king moves, well, we can now win the queen. So many really interesting lines here. The main goal is just, as I said, play a3, capture here with the bishop, rook out, and then e4, e5, e6, just keep pushing. There are many different lines, but you will always win material somewhere. So this is a really interesting way of trying to fight against this early e5 by black. There are more lines that I didn't show in this video. You can always check out the lead chess study in my Discord group if you want to see every single line and also go through this opening yourself. Then the next thing we are going to take a look at here is Queen's Gambit accepted. Again, we're going to play e4. And here, this line with e6, we already talked about this in my previous video. The main goal for black is to play in many variations knight f6, develop the bishop, castle. But against all of those lines, you do have some really amazing tricks, which I covered in the previous video. Right here, we are going to recapture and we are going to focus on what to do if black goes for an early c5 push, because that's a little bit more aggressive option for black. So we definitely need to cover that as well. But I'm going to go here with knight f6 first. c5 is also possible, but it doesn't really matter. Knight f6 first is the most popular, attacking the pawn, so we are going to defend. This is still similar to what we have seen before, but here black is going to play this early c5 push. So what can you do against this early c5? Well, against early c5, my recommendation is to push pawn to d5 and just take up a little bit more space in the center. You can capture here, but after you capture here, you will notice that if you do this, you will have to take back with the knight and then you lose this pawn here. So you probably have to take back with the king. And I don't think that's what you want. And if you don't capture, black is going to capture and you will lose your central pawn majority. So here I think pushing is a really good option. Most players with black will capture because capturing is also the best move. If they don't capture, they are also usually in trouble. So we are going to capture back. And white just has a really strong central pawn here, two developed pieces, and black doesn't really have anything good going for him. And there are some really interesting tricks that you have in this line. There are many possibilities for black, and I'm going to show you the most played variation, which is bishop d6. There are different lines for black. a6, bishop e7, sometimes queen e7 check. Which is immediately losing. Queen e7 is immediately losing. There are crazy lines here actually. King f1 is winning immediately, but you can also play knight e2. But we're going to cover that a little bit later. The first thing I want to talk about here is what if they play bishop to d6. So the main problem here for black is actually that black's pieces are terribly placed and we have a winning attack as white. And you might not see that right away because you think, well, we just have two pieces here. How can we have a winning attack, right? But we do have one against pretty much anything black tries. And it almost always starts with playing queen to e2. And queen to e2 is a really interesting move because we are giving a check. We are winning a little bit of time. We're also getting our queen involved with the attack. And the most popular response here by black is to play queen to e7. And then you just straight up have knight b5. And knight b5 basically threatens to take this bishop for free because this queen is pinned. There are a couple of options for black. If black castles, well, actually you can take, and then go here, and you're simply winning this rook because black doesn't have any way to save it. If black sees this and they try to capture here, well, you can just recapture, and still we are attacking this bishop. The bishop has to move, but in many lines we're also threatening to play knight to c7 here. So yeah, this bishop has to move, but if you look at this, where is it going to go? Like you could think maybe it can go here to e5, but then you have pawn to f4 attacking the bishop, and the bishop basically has nowhere to go. And wherever it goes, we always have knight c7 with a check and also pick up this rook. So the black pieces are really jumbled up here, really in a bad spot, and you will be able to win. As I said, this basically works against anything. The best defense probably is pawn a6, which we're going to cover in a bit. For example, as I said, queen e7, you can play knight here. They can play bishop g4, you can castle, they can take. None of this really matters. And then you will see that here again, and every line you are still going to go for this knight b5 ID. And black has to try and defend this. Let's say they go here, but then you can push pawn to d6, and you're going to go for this ID anyways. So really strong. The best thing you have to do in this position is just remember this ID with knight b5 and then trying to pick up the rook. And that is just the best plan against this variation for black. If black really knows what they are doing, or they studied the classical defense against the queen's gambit, they might play pawn to a6. Pawn to a6 is really good because, well, black can play pawn to b5, attacking her bishop, but also pawn to a6 actually stops this knight from coming in, so we won't have this knight c7 line anymore. So I think this is probably the best approach from the black side. If you face this, you can just play knight f3. Probably black's gonna attack you here, and that is actually a mistake we are trying to have black make. Because b5 here is actually not that good. If black plays regular moves, for example, bishop here, we still go for the queen, check right. For example, queen e7, castles, but everything is still fine because we don't have this knight b5, c7 ID. But if black goes for this b5 push, here, for this b5 push, which is the most played move, black is actually losing again because of a beautiful variation. Here you can just castle as white. You're just going to castle. And you're going to give away this bishop. Because now we have check with the rook. And, well, there's not really much black can do except blocking with this bishop, right? And then you just play pawn to d6. You're attacking the bishop. The bishop is pinned. And if they take this with the queen, well, now they just lost the full queen. Because this bishop cannot recapture since it is pinned. So after pawn to d6, I mean, there's not much black can do. If they castle, you actually get this. And you also get a fork. Even if they take your queen, right, you can always take here with check. So pretty incredible stuff. The best option for black is maybe to play something like knight c6, trying to defend this. But still crazy lines here. You can play bishop f4. You can also capture here if you want. So I think this is a really interesting line to play against this a6 variation. And anything else really, there's not much for black, but almost everything will run into at some point knight b5, knight c7 check, pushing the pawn here, giving this check with the queen just to get some pieces pinned along this open file. So interesting tactics for black. If you want to learn more about the queen's gambit, you should definitely watch this video next, because there are many interesting traps that I wasn't able to cover in this video. That's it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.